Welcome to another edition of Our City. On Wednesday, May 22nd at noon, I'm going to join members of the Elizabeth Rotary Club. It's going to be their annual scholarship luncheon. It's held at the Garden Restaurant, located at 943 McGee Avenue. For more information, please call 908-352-0670. And on Saturday, May 25th at 10:30 in the morning, the Historical Society Forum at the Elizabeth Public Library, located on the 4th floor of the main branch, which is on South Broad Street. I'd like to all remind everyone that Monday, May 27th, City Hall will be closed in observance of Memorial Day. However, there are ceremonies going on that day on Monday, May 27th. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the Elizabeth Firemen's Association will hold their annual memorial service for deceased firemen. This service will honor all firemen who have lost their lives in the line of duty. This ceremony takes place at the Union County Courthouse on Broad Street. It begins with a march of the firemen from Engine Company Number 1 a little further down on South Broad Street. And following that event at 11 o'clock in the morning, the community and city dignitaries will gather to honor fallen heroes of the City of Elizabeth's Memorial Day service, as well as all of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in defending the freedoms of our country. This ceremony is located in Winfield Scott Park, directly across from City Hall. And later that afternoon, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to attend a Memorial Day service for the Knights of Columbus, located at 328 Union Avenue. And on May 28th, Tuesday, I, along with members of City Council, City Directors, we're going to participate in the Youth in Government Day. And during this event, students from Elizabeth Public Schools are paired with a city official. And this day, they learn about municipal government, they learn about the city government, they learn about the fire department, police department, they learn about the entire city at large and all the roles that government officials play. The superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of schools. The students are designated to act in an official capacity, and their representatives are paired for each other during the day. There's a luncheon where we'll name the Youth of the Year at that luncheon. And if you need more information concerning this event, please call the City Clerk's office at 908-820-4130. If you need more information concerning these events or any other events, please call our Public Information Office at 908-820-4124. And this week's show, I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Jubilo Afonso to talk about Elizabeth Portuguese activities, as well as the Portugal heritage and the Portuguese parade coming up in the city of Elizabeth. Jubilo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mayor.
Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So tell us about your viewers. I mean, you got to tell your viewers about you, I should say.
Me, lifelong resident, City of Elizabeth. Right. I'm an attorney here in town. We have our office down Elizabeth Avenue, not too far from here.
Put a plug in.
I'm sorry?
Put a plug in for the office.
I have to. Afonso and Afonso on Elizabeth Avenue for all of your needs. And just very happy to be here. Happy that you have us on the show again to talk about the Portuguese community and what's going on.
I can't start unless I ask about, you have 2 sets of twins. You're the only person I know with 2 sets of twins.
Me too. People always ask me if twins run in my family, and I tell them no. They do now, but
They do.
but we were very surprised, very fortunate to have them. Right?
2 boys are 5?
They're 7.
2 boys are 7 already.
Yeah, remember when I came here to tell you that my wife was pregnant?
Yeah.
It's been 7 years already.
7 years.
And
The 2 girls are coming up on 2.
they're coming up on 2. They're about 20 months old, right? And I'll tell you, you're always worried when you have your second child if your first child is going to feel displaced, and thankfully, I think they like the girls more than we do. Right? They play with them. If there's something wrong, they try to take care of them. So it's always good because you're always afraid of that dynamic between the 2 of them. But 4 of them.
So I was just going to say, there's a set of 2 and a set of 2, right?
And I just hope that the girls are as well adjusted and nice as my boys are.
Yeah, that's a good way to be, Angelo. So you've been extremely active in the Portuguese community here in our city, and are you the chairman? You have titles, or what? But I just know you're the guy when it comes to Portugal Day activities and festivities, which is a tradition in our city.
I don't want to say I'm the guy, but I'm one of the ones that feels most comfortable coming on TV. So there's something. But there's a lot of events. I belong to a lot of the different groups that are Portuguese in the city of Elizabeth, the Lions Club, the Portuguese Instructive Social Club, the Portugal Day Committee itself that runs a lot of the events. I'm the vice president of the Portugal Day Committee this year, and I'm the president of the General Assembly of the Portuguese Club, the big one on 1 and 9. Right? And that being said, they choose me to come and speak with you and all of the viewers.
So as far as I'm concerned, you're the guy.
I'm the guy.
Yeah. But you have a lot of help. I mean, really.
Oh.
In order to put this parade on, it's a huge effort of a lot of people.
It is. The nice thing about the parade is the committee, it's made up of all of the different organizations in Elizabeth. So we have representatives from the church, from the Portuguese Club down the port, from the Lions Club, from the Leos, the youth group, and everybody comes together. And the nice thing about it, as opposed to a lot of the other organizations, is that you don't have a president that goes and does their thing and leaves and other people take over. I was president a couple of years ago, if you remember. Last year there was another president, and everybody's still involved. Right? The hats change around from one person to the other, but you have your function that you do, you have your events that you do, and everybody comes together and makes it happen.
So Jubilo, how many years now for the Portuguese parade?
41.
41 years.
1978.
Wow.
So it's not one of those.
And you never missed a year, I don't think, right? Unless it was
Well,
really
I have.
weather.
It was before I was born.
I know you're not even 41 yet. But I mean, unless there's a weather issue, I don't think they've missed.
The parade goes on. I remember a couple of years it rained, and who is available to, who's not wearing those fancy dresses that can't get wet, they still march down Elizabeth Avenue, down through Broad Street to the Portuguese Club.
So the origin and the history, did people have an idea? Did the Portuguese community, the Portuguese Club's been here since the 1920s, correct?
1922, we're going almost 100 years. Right. So we're counting on you to be there at our 100th anniversary.
So and I'm counting on being there too.
All right, and the Portuguese community at that point, one of the founders, he actually wrote a book, right? And I'm into these things, right? Obviously, and he says that that he was tired of the Portuguese community being lumped in with a lot of other just different organizations and groups. So that's why they met the Portuguese Club, in order to get together, in order to have their cultural diversity, in order to go and expose the things that brought Portuguese people together, right? And 1920s till now, it's a lot different, because back then you didn't have the internet, you didn't have TV the way you have it now. So how is it that you learned about your culture? Well, you would bring your children to the Portuguese Club. So we've had to change the way that we function a little bit, but the core idea is still there, right? We have our Portuguese language school, we have our folklore dancing groups, right? And children, in order to go and interact with other kids that have similar interests, similar backgrounds, they still go and their parents bring them to the Portuguese Club. Yesterday, my kids were there with a bunch of other kids doing a painting class, right? On a Monday night, they get together and we have a local artist come and teach them. This is how you draw a pyramid. This is shading. You make it darker over here, symmetry, and it's nice.
And the parents hang at the bar. No, I'm only kidding.
Well, drink coffee.
There's a lot of coffee going on there. So Jubilo, the current location of the Portuguese Club, since you're fascinating me about the history, was it at that location?
No, it was down on First Street, where School 1 is now. Right? So back in the, I want to say late 60s, right? It was that parcel of land, which is where School 1 is. Well, the state came in, they said, we need this land in order to build a school. So they bought it from the Portuguese Club, or forced us to sell it to them. With that money, we bought the parcel of land that's on 1 and 9. It's on the corner of Grove Street and 1 and 9. The actual address that I give people is 600 Grove Street. It's easier to get there. Right? But at that point, they went and they built the building that's there now. Right? We had an older social club that they had bought. I believe it was a church when they had actually bought it, and they transformed it. This new social club, I mean, you're going on 50 years now. But our current location was built in the early 70s.
So that was built in the early 70s, and then the parade shortly followed.
The parade shortly followed. We have the church that was formed in the city around the same time. So we had the church leaders, the leaders from the Portuguese Club, coalesce and come together and say that they wanted to have this showing of Portuguese culture, and that's where it came from.
Yeah, because Our Lady of Fatima took over Sacred Heart sometime in the early 70s.
Exactly.
When it happened. So, Jubilo, the reason behind the celebration and the festivities that we do is to celebrate Portugal independence.
It is, right? I don't want to say it's in order to celebrate Portuguese culture. It's actually based around the birthday of one of the famous poets. It's one of the epic poems out of the Portuguese culture and literary culture, and it's the only one in what's considered modern times, and it's based around his birthday, right? And that's why we chose that actual day, right? Which is where the entire world celebrates what's considered Portugal Day.
So we do it a week before Newark, right?
We do it a week before Newark does. The actual day is June 10th. So a long time ago, we sat down at the table with the main power brokers and we came into a deal because there's no point in having it on the same day.
Right.
We have the first Sunday, they have the second Sunday. Sometimes they're closer to June 10th, sometimes we are. It is what it is.
Okay. So the Portuguese presence in Elizabeth and the contributions to our community, they're all over. I mean, economically, politically, religious, government, business, legal profession.
It's hard for me to sit here and talk about the political contributions.
Yeah.
We could have our own what?
Your own Rotary Club. You got somebody from different walks of life. We're all part of it.
At the end of the day, we're all from Elizabeth. And I like to think that all of the groups, they come together. We try to make our neighborhoods better, right? We try to fix up the neighborhood around the Portuguese Club. A lot of Portuguese people live there. My parents live right across the street, right? But along with that, we build up the community around it, right? We create a safe environment. We have a garden that's there. It's places that people can go with their families and their children. And that's what we do. We do it for our children, our community, but at the same time, all of the other residents that are around here.
So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to get in and talk more about the parade and Grand Marshal and things of that, okay?
Very good.
Please stay with us after these messages. Back with more with Jubilo Afonso and the parade day festivities that will happen here in June.
Experience Elizabeth. It all starts here. Just minutes from New York City, we are the gateway to the state of New Jersey. Experience Elizabeth. It all starts here.
Welcome back to our city. I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Jubilo Afonso talking about Elizabeth Portugal Day Committee and Parade here in early June. Jubilo, before the break, we were talking about the committee, we were talking about the excitement of the Portuguese community, and every year you get to pick a Grand Marshal.
We do.
How does that process work, and who is this year's Grand Marshal?
Well, I'm glad that you asked me about how it works because, we try to make it fair. Right?
You don't have a backroom deal, a bunch of guys smoking cigars, say, yo, it's your turn?
That's what I hear about how it used to be. So we try to end that. We try to make it transparent so everybody knows that we're trying to pick the person that really deserves it. Right? This year, I'm very proud to say that it's a good friend of mine. So I didn't pick him. Right?
Well, you shouldn't have started with a good friend of mine.
But
so.
he is.
Okay.
He's been a good friend for a very long time. His name is Jack Martins, and I know that you know him very well too. Right? He's actually the correspondent from the Portuguese language newspaper, Luso Americano, and I've known him for the better part of 15 years. He's been doing that for a lot longer.
And he's covered the Portuguese community here in a huge way. It's a great. He's probably way more honored than anybody else could ever think he is.
And I remember the time. I remember because when we nominated him, he was sitting at the table. Right? And the way that the process works, since you asked me, is anybody can go and submit a nomination. Has to be in writing. Has to be by a certain date, and it has to have a written biography accompanying it. Right? You can't just submit a name and say, look at this person. And I remember him sitting in the room, and I think the man almost started to cry. Right? He didn't expect it from him. He nominated somebody else at that same meeting. Right? And we had to go and kindly tell him that he has to stand up and leave the room because we had to discuss his nomination.
Sure.
But he's a humble person. Right? He's a hardworking person. Sometimes you think about these Grand Marshals and say, oh, the guy's in a suit and tie all day, he does nothing. People probably say that about me. Right? But I've seen him, I've been there with him, where he goes, he puts up his sleeves, starts washing dishes, cleaning the floor, just doing whatever he can to save money for the club, for the organizations, and or to keep it moving, make sure that we proceed. He doesn't just report on the community, he's part of it.
No, Jack's a great guy. He couldn't have picked a better guy. I mean, he's really deserving. Do you have vice marshals or women or deputy marshals?
Well, we have 3 different types of marshals, right? So we have the Grand Marshal. That's the leader of the parade. Then we have a distinction that we give, which is referred to as the posthumous marshal. Right? The idea behind it is somebody that's deserving, that has passed away, that should have received the honor while they were still living. Right? Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Either the parade's only 41 years old, right? Either they had passed away before then, or other people were considered those years and they just didn't get it, right? And then we have a third marshal, which is honorary marshal. That's somebody that I want to say isn't part of the Portuguese community
I had that
per
once.
se.
Yeah,
You did.
it's
You
a
were
great
the
honor.
first one.
I was the first honor? Oh.
I remember being in that meeting when we created that title for you.
Oh,
Because we were
pretty neat. I
we
enjoyed
were
it.
pushing for Grand Marshal, and they said, but he's not Portuguese.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
but
Portuguese.
he deserves to be up there.
So you did the honorary marshal. That's
We did
pretty
the
neat how
honorary
you
marshal.
did that.
Yeah. And the idea, somebody that's not from the Portuguese community, but deserves to be up there because they've contributed and helped our community so much.
Okay.
Right? This year, that honor goes to Mr. George Vega. Right?
And how many cars is he going to bring?
I would assume I don't know how many. It's not only the quantity, it's the quality. Have you
He's
seen his cars?
he's offered me a car to go on dates with my wife. He's offered me cars and when I see him driving these 1940 and 1950 cars, and the condition they're in, it's just
They're
phenomenal.
beautiful.
Yeah, they
So
are.
he's offered. I gotta call him. Okay.
Well, you do. Your kids would probably love a spin around town in one of his convertibles from 1952 or something like
No,
that.
they're pretty cool, those cars.
Yeah, because I see him at the car shows all the time.
He enjoys it.
He does. He's a good guy too. Good for you. So when is the parade this year, and what's going to happen?
So, like I said before, first Sunday in June. This year it falls on June 2nd. Right? The parade, it starts at Union Square, which is, let me see the best way to describe it. There's a little Portuguese bakery there, Carloto's, which is essentially where the parade starts. And people march down Elizabeth Avenue, right here, past in front of City Hall, and make a left on Broad Street where the Union County Courthouse is. Essentially, that takes you straight to the Portuguese Club. Right? And the parade itself starts at 2 p.m. I don't know if I said that. And when we get to the Portuguese Club, there's a party.
And you always step off right on time, which is pretty impressive.
Well, you have to. if people try to delay it, they will.
Yeah, I know. You got to get off on time, and it works for us too.
That's right.
So tell us about it's the high point is the Portugal Day celebration. I called you the guy before, but who organizes the parade? That's a lot of work.
The chairwoman for the parade is Jennifer Costa, right? So she is the go-to person for the parade, right? So there's the Portugal Day Committee, which has a lot of different events, right? And she's the one that's in charge of the parade. She does outreach, she gets people together. She is the one that goes and tells everybody where they're going to line up and make sure that people are doing what they have to do.
So can anybody be in the parade, or is it limited to groups that are associated with the Portuguese community?
No, anybody can be in the parade. You obviously have to go and submit an application, right? The only thing that we go and that we require is that you have to have something about Portugal Day. So we're not going to let a pickup truck with some sheetrock go that says, XYZ lumberyard on it. You do have to have something with a relation to Portugal Day or Portugal on it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So I got to tell you, depending on the weather, it's probably, if not the most attended parade in the city. It's always way up there. Do you have estimates on how many people come?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that I don't. I don't want to sit up here and make up a number.
I'll make it, yeah. Like they do in New York City. 3 million people showed up.
Well, at least, maybe double. But we're very well attended. You notice that there's more clusters of people in certain areas. Obviously, everybody wants to be here in front of City Hall because that's where the bandstand is. We also have bleachers for people. A lot of people are also closer to the Portuguese Club, so that way they can just scoot over right into the club right after the parade ends in order to enjoy the festivities. But there's people lining the parade all the way from where it begins up until it gets to the Portuguese Club.
So tell us about the parade and the celebration afterwards. That's always a lot. The tables, if the weather's cooperative.
Well, even if the
And I got to tell you, I love the sardines, by the way. If I get to eat some.
Take your word for it.
You don't eat them?
No, I don't. I stick with the chicken.
You stick with the chicken.
You know
Does
why?
your wife eat the sardines?
Your hands.
I know your hands get greasy.
It's just greasy. The smell, it wwon't come off for 2 or 3
No.
days. But my kids like them, so I usually end up sitting over there peeling
With a
them
fork
away
or
anyway.
something. Yeah.
Well, you
You get
asking
more
about-
people than the parade, though. You get a lot of people come. More than just enough people in the parade. There's other extra people show up.
Oh, it fills out.
Yeah,
It fills
right.
throughout the day, especially if the weather is nice. But even when the weather doesn't cooperate with us, it's at the Portuguese Club. It's at our location, right? We have 2 floors. We have the banquet hall upstairs. We have the members area downstairs. So if the weather doesn't cooperate, everybody goes inside. Right? It's a little tight, but we make it work.
Anything new for this year's parade?
We're going, and the main thing is not with the parade itself. The one thing that we're changing is the fishing derby, which you always attend. And normally we have it in May, but we've decided to push it back to June. We're going to be working with groundwork also with it in order to try to make it more well attended. And we decided to do it in June for a couple of reasons. One, the weather, right?
Yeah, last year was a miserable day for the fishing derby.
Yeah, sometimes you get a lot of rain in May, and sometimes it's a little colder. So May is tricky, right? Aside from that, we wanted to go and turn it into not something leading up to the parade, sort of a celebration afterwards. After everybody goes, celebrates Portugal, celebrates the parade, we're done, now let's get together, let's have a good time.
Because you have a lot of stuff leading up to the parade.
We do.
Raising money, you do it through tell us.
Well, one of the events that we have coming up is our golf outing, right? It's on the 21st of May, right? And it's one of our larger contributors to our golfers, right?
But you also have the wine event you do, right?
Well, the wine tasting isn't a fundraiser. We don't charge anything for that. We
you
lose
don't?
a lot of money on it. That's a kickoff. We go and we sash our marshals. We get everybody together. We remind them of our events that are coming up, and it's in order for everybody to just gear up for the events that are coming together. After that, we have our pageant, which is where we have our king and queen, little prince and little princess.
And that's a long day.
It's a long day, and we have all of these kids that work for weeks and months preparing, right? The parents that are over there with them getting together. And that's also, it is a fundraiser of sorts, but the main thing is in order to get the younger generation involved, right? Get them involved with that. They then go and transfer over to the parade, and the king and queen, because they're the older ones, they always transition into our committee itself, so our committee gets a little bit bigger. and gets more of that youth dynamic.
And tell us about the people that are a part of the parade, the second generation, third generation. Are they still embracing the cultures and traditions of the Portuguese community or old Portugal?
Well, it is, and that's the whole point of it, right? Because I was exposed to these things by my parents. My parents immigrated over here. I'm first generation American, me and my brother. And we go to school, and what do you learn? You learn all of the things about the American culture, American history. So when we're here, now what we try to do is we try to tie that back to where you came from. You don't want to forget where you came from, or else where are you going, right? So in the Portuguese Club right now, we go and we have a garden that we have that brings people back to my grandfather. He was a farmer. That's what he did.
You always say something profound every year on this show. And this year's quote has to be, if you forget where you came from, where do you think you know where you're going?
I got to start making a list.
I know, because last year, I wish I could remember what you said last year, but it was moving as well. This year was interesting. Can I use that?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I came up with it, but you're welcome to.
You think somebody else might have said it first. I'm just curious. So current news about Portugal Day and the activities, how do they get that?
Our website, www.elizabethportugalday.com, or obviously you can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
And do you have any guests from Portugal coming for this parade?
Well, we do have the ambassador from Portugal who's located in Washington, D.C. He's confirmed his attendance this year, as well as the consul general located out of Newark. All right, we are waiting on some other attending guests, but I don't want to say their names because they haven't been confirmed yet.
Well, the ambassador is a big deal.
We always enjoy his presence. It's not often that he comes up here from Washington, but it's a treat for us.
It sure is. So any other upcoming events besides the fishing derby?
No, the fishing derby
And the golf outing?
is essential. Well, we have the golf outing, then we have the flag raising. We didn't
yeah.
mention that. That's going to be on May 31st, right, because it's always the Friday just before the parade. It's going to be here at City Hall as thank you. Right?
Oh, we have fun that day. I get to drink a little port before we raise the flag. So
Port, sometimes champagne, depending on what everybody's
depends on
mood
who's
is.
here, right?
Yeah.
And who's providing the stuff.
I think I'm providing it this year. I've got a nice
you are?
bottle of 1978 Port, 41 years, just like our
do?
parade.
Oh.
And so I'll be bringing that this year. But this year we're going to be trying to do it outside again like we did last year. The weather was wonderful last year. It was very well attended. We had a nice turnout. If not, you have always been kind enough to let us use your council chambers, and we'll be moving it inside if the weather doesn't permit, but we're raising our flag on that day.
So Jubilo, I thank you for all of your efforts in coming here and taking time out of your schedule to share with the community the events of Portugal Day and the celebration of Portuguese culture here in our city.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. For Mr. Jubilo Afonso and Portugal Day Committee and Portugal Day Culture, I'm Chris Bolwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.